Welcome, everybody, to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Modern Lending Podcast. I'm your host, Alec Hansen. Today, first, let's frame it up before we introduce the guest. If you're tuning into Season 3, we're doing a whole season on storytelling. And so why storytelling? Well, the entire world passed down all of human knowledge with storytelling forever and ever. And it's how we've learned and how we continue to learn. And I come from a family of storytellers. And so just as the chance to get with people who have experienced and done tremendous things, to hear their side of the world. David Lykken's coming on. Now, David's been the host of Lykken on Lending for over 13 years now. This guy was in podcasting before podcasting was a word. He's also been a tremendous mortgage experience, speaking on Fox News. I mean, this guy, if you don't even, I've been following this guy since I got into business. And he's one of the consummate storytellers of our industry too. So I want to bring him on, tell some stories, share some knowledge, and have some fun. So let's get ready to rock and roll. David, what's up, my man?
Love that intro. That's a great intro.
So my buddy and I, we're all big nerds, and so that if you watch WandaVision or any of the Marvel stuff, we're this whole season's going to be a WandaVision theme. So we're starting back in the glory days of TV. But welcome to the show, my man.
Good to be here.
So David, we were rapping in the green room before we went live, and for those of you that are live right now, this can be as collaborative as you want. So we got comments, we can share some stuff, but this is super exciting for me, David, because I follow you relentlessly. I love the stuff you put out. You are one of the best storytellers I know. And so I was like, well, who to bring on to talk about this? And you have such experience. And so here's really where I want to start, and then we can just go to crazy places here. Podcasting and what we're doing right now has become so buzzy. Everyone's got a podcast. Everyone's doing podcasting. And yet I look back at Lykken on Lending and I'm like, no, this guy carved the space in mortgage. 13 years?
Yeah, we're doing our 13th season. That is right. Yeah, hard to believe.
It's crazy. So I got to start with what the heck? Why did you do this? How did you get into this? What happened there?
That's a great story. So I was asked to speak on a topic. I do a lot of conference speaking, public speaking since we sold our last mortgage company, started consulting in 2000. And so I'm in 21 years into consulting. And I got asked to speak at a conference. I do a lot. I enjoy public speaking. I love connecting with people. And however you can do it, I think a podcast or a conference is the best way to do it. Well, I didn't have a clue what podcasting was, but I was asked to speak at a conference on a particular topic. And I said, I told them, I said, that's not my sweet spot. They said, go figure it out. You're a good speaker. We want you here. I said, okay. So I started searching, researching, looking on this. And I said, I have dyslexia. Now we can talk about that later because it's
we're going to get there
in a number of ways, but I have some dyslexia, severe. And so for reading at the end of the day, it's not my favorite thing. I mean, I graduated from college. I got over it. I've learned how to overcome these things. And so I wanted to hear. My auditory retention, Alec, is so much better than my reading retention. So, and that's so true. What's interesting, the number of executives that have dyslexia. I gave the book, The Gift of Dyslexia, which really opened my eyes to this whole topic, to an executive. He called me. He says, I started reading the book. I cried all night long. He says, this opened my eyes to what I've been fighting. I had no clue. This described me. Wow. And it's the gift of dyslexia. So we start seeing someone as a learning disability as a gift. So anyway, I had this gift. It seemed like a curse. And I couldn't read. I could read. I'd read well, but it's holding it. And at the end of the day, when you're tired, that's not the thing. So go to your strengths, go to what you do well. And so I want to listen. So I said, there must be a podcast. I've been hearing about the new thing called podcasting. There must be a podcast out there that helps, that talks about this. I searched and I searched. I Googled, I binged, I did everything.
Ask Jeeves, yeah.
Ask Jeeves, you name it. Whatever was working back then. I don't even think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the point of it is I could not find anything. And I hear this. I'm an entrepreneur. When you see an opportunity and no one else is filling it, it's called FNAFI. Find a need and fill it. I'm going, I wonder if anybody else out there would enjoy a podcast about mortgage lending and talking about more complex things. So I was a top salesperson like you out there. I love that side of the business. I crossed over, owned 3 mortgage banking companies, an owner operator of 3 mortgage banking companies, and I had to learn the technical sides of it. And so I consult more on the operational side. I do some sales consulting, but that's what I did. So I couldn't find anything. I go, I think I'm going to start one. Let's see what happens. So I called people that knew a whole lot more about topics. I go, I'll just interview people. I don't need to have to be the subject matter expert. I'm going to just interview. I'll do what Alec does. So I did that, and it's out there now. We're in our 13th year of doing this. 12 years passed, and we love it. And I think I just turned 71 on Tuesday this week, so I'm going strong. And I found a new gear, and what it is, it's making a difference in people's lives, and that's what storytelling, Alec, can do so effectively. Is we can teach, we can give principles, but when you wrap those around a story, people remember them and they'll hold on to them.
I'm not ready for this tangent yet, but you said that, and I have to hit a point on it because it's so powerful. There are a lot of loan officers today putting out video content, mainly because it's very important, and they should be. But what I've noticed is the people that tell their content in a story, that deliver the message of, but through an experience of somebody else or something they've experienced, it's so much more powerful than somebody who's just like, debt to income ratio is important, and here's why, and it's crazy. So you're dead on.
Learn how to communicate in a story, and you're going to be so much more effective in whatever you do, whether you're leading people, selling, whatever. It is so good to have a story. It's important. I'm working on this still, Alec. I don't know if you struggle with this as a storyteller, but I'm still working on the conciseness of my stories.
Right.
My stories get long. Pretty soon you see people going.
Well, let's do this, David. Right. Give me the top 1, 2, 3 stories that you can recall from your podcast career over 13 years. I mean, what stands out?
You know what? Some of the ones is when you connect with people. The most important thing is I love connecting with people. There are some wonderful stories. Like, for example, when we use the theme of Christmas, I had Kevin Stitt on and Casey Crawford, both very strong faith-based guys and
awesome people
and awesome individuals. And I've had them talk on. It's Christmas. I thought, what a great time talking about giving back. Now, Kevin is the governor of he was at Gateway, and he still has Gateway, but I think I'm not sure where he is on ownership of that. But anyway, he is the governor of Oklahoma. So, I mean, he went on to greatness, but we had them around, and we had these moments where you connect with people and share about giving back. But some of my favorite ones are the ones we've done on Mother's Day and Father's Day. You go like, how do you bring a podcast, an industry podcast, to that? So one of my favorite ones that gets downloaded like crazy is one of my favorite people out there is Marsha Davies. Marsha makes a difference, and she has her daughter. And so I went out and interviewed Marsha and her daughter on the podcast, and that podcast gets downloaded crazy years later on Mother's Day. And so it's amazing. The other one is I did 2 podcasts. I've done a whole series. So every Mother's Day, I try to get a new one out there that's really meaningful, connects with people, that has a great story. One of the stories in that one that everyone quotes is Marsha says, people are like elevators. They either send you up or they send you down. And I go, that is such a great saying. And so I can so understand why, and her daughter works at Freddie Mac, which coincidentally where Marsha started. And it's, again, not because of Marsha, she got on her own and worked her way up. But you know what? I did another one. It's CMG. Chris George. Chris George came on, and so it was Father's Day, and we had all of his sons, and they liked the song Rockin' Robin. That start out with that, and then we had them on. That was so much fun to get to know the Georges and the whole family, because I think these companies, I'm also interested in generational companies where you pass the company successfully on to one generation, from one generation on to the other. They're in the process of doing that. Another one of my interviews that I did on Father's Day was Mitch Kiter and my 3 sons. So it's Mitch and my 3 sons. I'm old enough. Going back, there was a TV program once a long time ago called Mitch and My 3 Sons. So we built it around that. And you realize the talent, and you realize, I mean, I think what's wonderful about the millennials and the Gen Zers, they're more interested in your story about who you are. And when we start learning how to tell these stories effectively, there's a whole lot of reason why you'll want to do business with the Georges or with Mitch Kiter or Marsha Davies at the NBA. I mean, there's just a whole lot. So my deal is learn how to tell a story and tell it well, and build it around the season that you're in. But you're right about loan officers. There's some you go like, oh, dude, that is really bad. And then there's some like, man, that was good. And I think it's being authentic, transparent, and just sharing it. Don't work on perfection. Work on the.
One of my favorite books that I probably read every couple of years and go back to it is How to Influence and Influence People. And I've wondered why it was my favorite, one of my favorites. And then I realized really quickly it's because all of it is wrapped in stories.
It is.
Each of the chapters dives into a story of an experience of this thing and this thing, and it lands the points, at least for me, very clearly and concisely.
Yep. Patrick Lencioni does the same thing. All of his books, all his business books are written in a fable. And it's when you transfer that principle through a fable, through a story, it sticks, and it's really much more powerful.
Well, so David, what experiences have you had wrapped in stories that have been transformative for your career, your business, your personal life? Let's dive into a couple of these things.
Well, this is an odd one. It's when I was early in the business, the most transformative thing that happened with me is when my boss came out to fire me.
Yes, good start.
That's like it's that's not supposed to be a seminal moment in your history as you're about to get fired. Trouble is I was so wrapped up in my success. I was successful. I was a top producer. I was doing extremely well, but we talked about dyslexia. I couldn't add up a column of numbers because the numbers move around. So if you got a column of numbers, and this was, I go back to it's like I had to walk through 5 feet of snow to get to school and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I started out when there was no calculators, Alec. That's how long I've been in this. We started in 1973. A 4-function calculator costed over $300. It was old Commodore. And so I started out and we didn't have that. So I had to add up numbers by the head. Well, when you're dyslexic and numbers move from one column to another, how are you going to get the same answer twice?
No chance. Yeah.
So and I was a top producer, so they were loving the production. But the compliance department, dang those compliance people, they like numbers to add up. Alex, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with compliance people? They be facetious, of course. And I worked for a bank. It's even more so. So I couldn't get numbers to add up. Finally, the compliance department prevailed, and they said, you know what? I'll never get LD Slauson. She's been gone for a long time. God rest her soul. She was both a friend. She became a good friend because I learned to appreciate her strength and her genius. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what happened is she convinced the president of the bank he needed to fire me.
Oh, God.
So on his way to come out to fire me, he's really conflicted. We got a top producer. I'm setting this guy free. You know what's going to happen. He's going to be picked up within an hour or two. He'll be hired by someone else, by the competition. And so he stopped at his friend. Now, his friend has a master's degree in business, and he stopped at the auto body shop of this guy. And so he loves working on cars. He followed his passion. He was doing really successful. Working his passion, another part of the story I love telling. And so anyway, this story, he stopped by the guy that's got a master's degree, but he runs an auto body shop and he's working in there. And he goes, hey, I need to sit and talk to you. And the guy says, okay, what you doing? He says, I'm going out. What's the problem? He says, I'm going out to fire one of our top producers. I go, you're firing your top producer? Why are you doing that? He says, he can't add up a column of numbers and get the same answer twice. And he says, our compliance department is screaming and they're prevailing. I get it. We have a liability. I don't know what to do. And the guy looks at him with a master's degree, owns the auto body shop, common sense, blue jeans and old bib overalls, following his passion. He goes, you're the president of a bank and you can't figure this out? He goes, hey, listen, I'm already conflicted enough. Why do you have to add some, salt in his wound? He says, well, what would you do, Mr. Master's degree? And the president of the bank was very proud of the fact that he had succeeded and he didn't have a college education. He was very, very bright, but he didn't have a college education. So what would you do, Mr.? He says, I would go out and buy him a car. I'd get him 2 assistants and tell him he could never touch a piece of paper. And the guy goes, duh. He said, can I borrow your phone? He called HR, says, cancel the termination papers.
Yes.
And he called it, says, do we have any cars that we repossess from our consumer lending? He says, yeah, we got one out at this one office. What kind of car is it? It's a nice car. He says, get the keys ready. We're going to give that to Lykken. So what happened was, he's coming out. He says, Dave, I need to meet with you. I thought I won an award. Yes. Alec, I'm going, yeah, come on out. It's got to be good. You got a bonus for me? I mean, it's all about me. I mean, me.
You're getting fired.
I had no clue. And so thank God I never went to thank that auto body guy, but it saved my career. But here's the most important part. It taught me the importance of focusing in on my strengths. I'm a relationship guy. Yeah. I want to tell stories. And what that experience, which could have been devastating for the bank, for the company, it could have been great for the competition. Someone who had discovered how to utilize David Lykken. And I think that's what one of the things we teach is in our consulting and our coaching is we help people. Have you taken time to study what their person's strengths are? Mm-hmm. I think that's so important.
So I got to piggyback on this because speaking of being fired, so my dad fired me in mortgage. And so it's super small, but I was up working at I was up at UC Berkeley for school, and during summer I stayed up the last summer and I got a job in mortgage. and I was doing well. It was 2002 or three, and there's lots of loans happening, and I was working in a builder branch. So there's lots of, they didn't want to do refis. And anyway, I decided that I was going to work through my last semester. I was going to stay working because I had I had a couple classes. So I was like, I can stay working. Yeah. And so I didn't tell my dad, didn't tell anybody. I was just going to stay working. And all of a sudden I get fired and I get terminated. And I go, how? I didn't do anything wrong. I call HR, I go, you can't fire me. What did I do? And they pull it up and they go, well, there's a note in here from your father. And he goes, enjoy your last semester. You have your whole life to work. You can start up again after the school's done. And he turned me from he wouldn't let me work.
Wow.
Yeah. But I did enjoy my last semester, and it was a micro gift. I'm so driven that I wasn't going to stop anyway. So I was like, I'm going. And he actually had to pull me back. Be like, no, just, you get to relax a little bit longer. You're still a child. Yeah. Cause you think you're so old in college.
Oh yeah.
I'm an adult, and I'm like, now that I have kids and I'm 40, I'm like, I was not an adult at all.
I'm mature. If you doubt me,
no.
That's a degree. I got a degree.
Yeah. I'm like, oh no, I'm not prepared for the life. Well, okay. So I love this one, David, getting fired. What else you got? What's another good one?
And then there's the stories now is what I've done for others and start making a difference in people's lives. I think what you start looking at I've lived long enough, I've garnered enough experience. People say, Lykken, you're doing really well in consulting. You've been doing it over 20 years. I mean, you're like one of the most highest paid consultants. That's a proud title, by the way, because when you're consulting, do you ever ask the heart surgeon before you go on for surgery? Now, can I ask you a question? How much is this going to cost me? No, you ask, how many have you done? How much experience you have? So I've got 47 years of experience under my belt. And so I've got some experience and some stories, and we share those, and we always work it out so it works financially. Sure. But I love working with executives. I love working with them about leadership. And Patrick Lencioni, I mentioned him earlier.
Yes.
One of the things that he recently launched that I love is the 6 working geniuses. And what it talks about is find out your genius. There's 6 of them. There's 2 that work in the area of ideation or creating ideas. There's 2 that work in the area of making things happen, or we're discerning if an idea is good in the execute. And then there's the last one is the execution. So there's 3 areas. So it's based on the word widget. So it stands for, if your working genius is wonderment, that means you create things out of nothing. You wonder why things work. So there's a lot of people walking around who have the genius of wondering. Then there's the people that have the genius of invention. That's what Steve Jobs did, created that iPhone that revolutionized the world. Then there's the guy that has discernment. So we work through this, and we help people see and recognize in their company, in their branch, where they're working with, where is their genius. I was recently working with a company, and the executives that own this company, the owners of the company, going, come on, guys, why is it that we are the ones that always have to come up with the solutions? And I go, and so I said, hey, I've got a little assessment I'd like to run. Let me send this out. I'm a part of the Capipo group, which is a special group that gets access to these tools through Patrick Lencioni and the table group. So I sent this out and I said, let's have the assessment done. We're going to have you guys take it as well. We took this assessment, and guess what? They're working geniuses of the executive team. They had hired all get her done people. These are people with the engagement and tenacity, the ability to come up ways to get things done, and then that fortitude to drag over the fight. They're working frustration. So he breaks into your working genius, your working competency, your working frustration. I know I'm talking some material, but to put wrap it in the story, here is an executive that did not know how his people are wired, and they were asking them to do what is their working frustration. Does that make sense, Alec?
Totally. Clarity. Crystal.
And when we try to get people, to do things that frustrates them, guess what? They're going to go home. They're not going to have a good day, even if they're paid well. But when we get people working in their working genius, then they come home. It can be the toughest day, longest day, most biggest challenge. But if you focus your people to work on solving problems using their working geniuses, which is 2 of them, that we always have a dominant, subdominant, then you get them through. So it is transforming companies when you start getting these things. And that's what I love doing. I love helping executives because I believe in a TGIM culture. We should have a TGIF. TGIF is thank God it's Friday. We've worked our butts off all day. It's time to go boogie and go home and have a great weekend. Enjoy our family, enjoy our friends, go to the soccer game, go to a ball game. Just got invited to go to Dallas game on Sunday. So the thing is, we should go do those things. However, if we have created a company where it's exciting, we should also have a TGIM, because for most people, even those that don't have to work, I have one of the guys that works for me, Mark Helm, very successful, very wealthy. He works because he wants to.
Yes.
It's a TGIM. It wants to come back and make a difference, even though he's got all the reasons why you'd not have to work. He continues to work. So I think it's finding those things. And that's what I'm passionate about, Alec, is I want to help companies create a TGIM. Thank God it's Monday culture, and recognize how to operate and organize your people and hire to certain strengths, their geniuses, recognize them, and rearrange your organization in such a way that everyone is working in their working genius and in their working competency, and avoiding working in their working frustration. So fascinating. That's what I'm passionate about.
So when would this aha moment happen for you? When did you start understanding this framework? Was it Lencioni's work? I mean, this is a paradigm shift.
Well, I think Lencioni brought me tools of something I've been passionate about for decades.
There you go. Yeah.
And I think it comes from working in some really dysfunctional deals where it was never a TGIM. It was like, arg, it's an arg, it's Monday, not a TGIM. Thank God it's Monday. And you work in enough of those cultures, you go like, my marriage suffered, my relationship with my kids suffered, my health suffered, because I was in a miserable environment. And I believe that whether you're a boss or just a supervisor, or if you own and run a whole company, you have a huge responsibility to create a culture. And I believe you're going to be held accountable at some point in time for what you did with the people that worked in your organization. And like Marsha Davies said, are you sending them up like an elevator, putting them up into a better place? Or are you pushing them down? And I believe in the concept of creating an environment where people just look forward, because I really believe people want to work, but they want to work in a healthy environment, Alec.
Well, so share some of your experiences on this. So what were these, well, I'll call them toxic environments, but what were they like? What was happening in them? What was the leadership like?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, another one of Patrick's books is on the 5 dysfunctions. It talks about trust as one of the foundational things. I think there's just a lack of trust. Yeah. And the other thing is, we have another company that we're consulting to where everyone is afraid to piss off anybody.
Ooh, I like this.
They're afraid of conflict. Yes. I mean, if there's 2 people together at any amount of time, ask anyone who's been married for more than any amount of time, there's conflict. And that's what happens. And if we embrace the conflict and we celebrate the conflict and we do it in a healthy way, it strengthens the trust foundation. Agreed. In other words, Alec, you and I are working together. If I'm processing your loans and I go, Alec, this sucks, or you come back on me and say, Lykken, why didn't you do this?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm struggling with this. But you raise it up, but you confront it. The unhealthy companies are afraid of conflict. And I'm thinking of one particular company, obviously won't name it, where this company, probably one of the more profitable ones out there, is looking at their business, and they didn't even realize that they've stressed a culture of we all get along. That got translated into, and so therefore never confront. Because we're afraid of conflict, because what it looks like. And that is created a huge dysfunction. That is a blind spot.
Well, share some experiences you've had with healthy conflict.
Oh my gosh, that's one of the best ones. I love getting into meeting where people are free. I have such a relationship with you, Alex, that I can go in the room and I can be pissed off about this. But and I know he loves me. I like him. And when you're in that, you go, come on, Alex, you're better than this. Yeah. That's a healthy conflict versus you suck at this. Why don't you fix this? Why don't you address this? I've talked to you about this 5 times and you're not doing anything about it. I should fire your sorry behind. Bleep, bleep. And the reality is, you come in and you take on and say, Alec, I know you are so much better than this. What's going on in your life? You're distracted. You know what? Hey guys, you know what? One of my kids is one of our family members just got diagnosed with COVID. I am so distracted right now. You go, I'm so sorry. Let's put some other people around you right now. So if we can confront and enter into conflict, you're going to learn about things, and it drives relationships deeper, Alex. And that's the missed opportunity when people say, I'm just afraid to conflict. I'm in conflict, get into conflict and confront. That's the word I was looking. I'm afraid to confront someone because it may create conflict.
Yeah, I love that insight, David. It is understanding the person through the conflict, but if you like you said, if you don't have that relationship, and I can't see through it, and I can't see that you're actually not mad at me, that we're trying to solve a problem. But yeah, that's a mature, hard thing.
I think a lot of it, and there's also things that you could also tell something like a company that's driven by a CFO type. They have more of a financial. They're a numbers KPI person.
Yep.
I'm about KPIs. I want to say how many loans have you submitted? And they extract with that KPI language. I believe in KPIs. We need to manage our business by key performance indicators. No question. Good sound business practice. But where that goes over the line and gets us stuck in a ditch is when it takes out the fun factor. And there's got to be, we get together. I'm coaching, I'll put her name out there, Emily Farley of Atlantic Bay, and I'm coaching her. She's the head of production for the company. And I just love Emily. And she is all out about creating fun in her organization. So they've done some of the most innovative things, Alec, on how to create fun on Zoom calls. Like, I mean, I think one of them was how much bling can you wear on a Zoom call? So people, like the ugly sweater. So everyone's got this stuff bling, and it's just fun, crazy stuff. And so I really believe that there's things we can do to create that culture, even in a Zoom distributive workforce.
Daniel is chiming in. Thanks, brother. Yeah, this is fun. David's killing it. Good insight. So, David, I want to ask this question, and it's so funny that you mentioned that you have dyslexia. There's another really prolific podcaster named Chris Ross who I've talked to, and he came out. He was like, "I have dyslexia," and I'm like, "Are you serious?" And he's got 2 million downloads. I mean, he's just, and so one of the things that I know people take inspiration from is just how humans deal with hardship, and having dyslexia. I mean, how did you figure this out? What hardships did you have? You've obviously thrived through it, which is incredible. But I mean, I know it hasn't been easy.
It hasn't. And I thrived through it without having the knowledge I'm about ready to share. And it comes in, guess what? It comes in a story. So we moved from Southern California. We sold our last mortgage company that I had an interest in. And I was ran the mortgage banking division for this company as one of the owners. We sold the company and we moved out to Austin, Texas. And putting our daughters, and we bought a home, and we're living. That's where we live now. And we loved our time in Southern California. I wept. I had to give it. I mean, I could tell you that whole story. That's a whole nother story, leaving Southern California. But we got to Austin, Texas, great community, wonderful city, and a lot of great culture here. But we're putting our kids in our school, and it didn't work. The school with private school we wanted to get them in, there was one position open for our oldest daughter. Our youngest daughter hadn't started school yet, and we couldn't get him into that school. So my wife put him in the public school, and there was just didn't work. Our kids were in private school in California, and they wanted. So my wife says, "I'm a school teacher. I've thought about homeschooling. What'd that be like?" And so she started homeschooling. She said, "Well, before we do that," she says, "I think we need to hire a consultant." I raised my hand. I wasn't a consultant at that moment. I said, "That's a great idea." So we hired a consultant that came in and suggested the learning styles. Now, my wife had gone to school on that, but she said she did not rely on her education. She went out for updated, latest experience. That's where a consultant can come in, add great value. This consultant came in. I can't thank this lady enough. She walked in, interviewed us. She was pretty serious. She had her game face, came in. "Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you." My wife and 2 daughters. And she said, she looked at the interviews and questions. She said, looked at my wife. She says, "You must feel like a stranger, like you're on a foreign planet." And my wife goes, "Excuse me, why do you say that?" "Well, your husband is severely dyslexic. Your youngest daughter, your biological daughter, is dyslexic, and your adopted oldest daughter has dyslexia, but not as severe. She has dysgraphia." And Nancy knew all these terms. And I go, "Just what?" And she says, "Yeah, and I'm going to give you this book, David, The Gift of Dyslexia." Now I have dyslexia, so I struggled to read it, but
exactly.
But oh my gosh, Alec, what it did is I realized dyslexics process multiple streams of thought. We can jump from one topic to another topic and come back to that topic. And we're a linear thinker. Like my wife is a very linear thinker, one thought after another. And so you're in your working environment. Think about your working environment. You think about your boss. How many people you're involved in a conversation and they jump from this topic to this topic to this topic, and they come around and they have no problem. It all comes together for them. They're highly dyslexic. A very big clue that they're highly dyslexic. Embrace that gift, because that is a gift when you understand to harness these things. So that also helps you manage them when you're like that.
Yeah.
So I felt like I know, like inside of a racquetball court, just taking the ball and throwing a bing, 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 bing. My thoughts would go all over everywhere, but they were around the topic. But the linear thinker had very difficult time following me. Dyslexics, by the way, also love stories. Dyslexics love us stories.
Absolutely. I mean, Steve Sims is somebody I've hung out with and follow, and he's got on stage before, and he says, I've never spelled something wrong in a video. I was like,
that's great. I saw that interview. That was a good interview. You knocked that one out of the park. I love him. He's
Dave, we got time for a couple more here. Here's what I want to ask. So obviously you've been consulting for a long time, and you've been in the middle of some very interesting experiences. I have to imagine you come flying in, and all of a sudden you drop in like a paratrooper into whatever's going on. And so give me a story of a time when you dropped in and things were radical, and whatever that means for you, and what happened in that experience.
Well, there's one celebrated story. It happened in New York, and I was fairly new in the consulting side. I'd been 2 years in and had developed my confidence about it. And one of the things I loved when I was in running a branch or running a company, I loved buying companies that are really messed up. I mean, effed up, and it's probably an appropriate word, even though that's not one that we embrace all the time typically. But these were really effed up companies, and I love getting into them because there's an opportunity. I could buy it. I buy the company at a very low price because of the problem.
Sure.
And then I come in. So I love doing turnaround management. So it's something I've been doing for a long time. Identify the problem, go in, set the problem right, and then you have a company that's got great value. And so that's one of the ways I grew a lot of the businesses I've owned for the years. So I got paired. So I got this company in New York called me and says, "You don't know us, but we've heard about your reputation of solving very complex problems." And this also ties to dyslexia, which is really interesting. So I said, "Sure. What's the nature of the problem?" He says, "We'll tell you when you get here. We're sending you a ticket. Come on in." I'm going, this is going to be fun.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued.
I was intrigued too, but I'm getting paid a lot of big money to fly in to listen to it. So I went into this boardroom of a large corporation. Nice. You take a look at view of New York City. Everything's out there. They had everything there, and they're very impressive people, intimidating people walked in. Of course. Very bright, very talented. I look at the resume of these people I'm going to be consulting to, and I go, holy cow, this is a successful group of people. Why am I in this situation? Well, they got a problem. Let's listen. So they started in 9:00. They started and they talked for 2.5 hours. Going through, we got this problem. The department heads are pointing finger. And if you hadn't done this, and if this, well, obviously we have a lot of lack of trust, dysfunction going on in this place at a big time. But here's what the key. This is what a gift of dyslexia will do. You have a tendency to listen, and you don't get buying in on any one story. So I listened and I listened and I listened. And dyslexics, I'm a music major, I'm a vocal major. So also I recognize the gift of music. You are very creative. That's also, I have one of the 6 working geniuses, genius of invention. So I can get into complex situations and I can hear things. I love jazz. I love playing jazz. So I used to, I'm not so good at it anymore. So when I walk into that thing at the end of 2.5 hours, they said, "Dave, we've hired you to come in. They're about ready to serve lunch. Do you have any clue of what's going on?" Alec, at that moment, it looked like a ball of tape, double stick tape. I couldn't even at the moment find the end of one piece of tape to start pulling on to get this thing. But I relied on the gifts, my experience and the gifts. And I think a lot of people are afraid to put themselves out there.
Absolutely.
So what happened is I said, I believe I know exactly what the problem is. And I pushed back from the conference table, went to the whiteboard, and I got a complete download. I could tell you, get into this on another topic sometime. I got a complete download and I started writing. It came out because I love, there's a book out here. I'm going to put this up here for everyone to read. This is a book called Rare Leadership.
Yeah.
By Marcus Warner and Jim Wilder. And it talks about brain science. It talks about your left brain and your right brain. We process too much of the problems in our left logic brain. We need to use the right brain. And then in that is the limbic brain that has no language. Simon Sinek talks about that in his why. He talks about the heart center. So the important part of this thing is learn to put yourself out there into complex situations, have confidence in your experience and what you've done, your training. I did that. We celebrated that. They go, that's exactly the problem. Then we spent the rest of the day drafting out, mapping out a solution to that problem.
Wow.
So with a few of those things that happen in my life, Alec, you're willing, that doesn't always happen, but
no.
There's times it's being honest. You say, oh, this one is one that let me meditate on this. Let me chew on this a little bit. I journal a lot. I believe in journaling. It's another thing. Writing down your stories, journaling a lot. I think it really helps cement things and push things into you so they can come out later. So go on and on.
Well, let me ask you this, David. Do you have a story or an experience in your life that was almost a fork in the road type of thing?
Oh, yeah.
Where something happened and it changed, and you look back and you wonder, well, if it didn't happen, my life would have been different. What happened? What was it?
Well, there was a particular job offer that happened.
Oh.
I had always positioned myself I was raised by an entrepreneur. I should have recognized I'm an entrepreneur, but and my dad was an entrepreneur, my mom worked for a bank. I liked the lifestyle of the bankers that my mom worked with. And so I thought that's the solution. I want to be that. And I denied what I'm going to refer to as an inner calling to go out and be an entrepreneur.
Oh.
So what happened is I pursued a job, I positioned, I got classes, I took this, and I worked hard, effort, grinding, working. It's the working frustration. It's one of the two worst geniuses I worked. I pushed through to make something happen. Yes. And I was positioned for this job. And I was being offered the job. And I don't need to get into it, but a circumstance entered in that had nothing to do with me. And they pulled the job back from me. And it was the dream job I had been positioning for 10 years.
10 years.
Devastated.
Yeah.
And then there's more that came out of that. There was some character assassination that came out of that. I had nothing that came out of the blue. People saying, well, but it's good you didn't hire Lykken because of this or that or this or that. And it devastated me. It put me in that. But what it did is, how do we handle those moments of rejection or failure or something didn't go? It's the ricochet effect. Do you ricochet up or do you ricochet down? Mm-hmm. And I did get absolutely knocked on my ass. I mean, I got to tell you, it was a blow. I lost a lot of the network I was operating within at the time because we didn't know what to believe. And in that moment, I found something and I go, I'm an entrepreneur. And I created a software company. I created this, I created that. And that's where all the success has come, is working in my working genius, in the creating, inventing, and then galvanizing and motivating, making things happen. That's my two working geniuses.
That's wild. And I know people can reflect to that, because all of us have had moments where they're pivotal and you get knocked down and you got to figure, especially mortgage. I mean, I feel like you get kicked in the teeth once a month here, just for being in the industry.
Yep. I'll never forget riding on the airplane just right after the housing crisis. And we were riding on an airplane. It was late at night, and a convention I was on a flight, and so it was in Las Vegas. All these conventioneers joined the flight, and it was late. We're flying to Austin, and this they were drunk and fun. It was a fun group, and they go, "What industry are you in?" I said, "Well, you guys have a good time. What do you do?" "We came from the convention or such and such." And I said, "Well, you guys are having a good time." He said, "Well, what industry are you in?" And I said, "Well, I'm in the mortgage industry." And they go, "Folks, we found one of the guys that crashed our economy. Let's kill him." And so it was one of those moments you go like, oh, geez, maybe I better be a little bit more hidden about it. I'm in the mortgage industry, because Neil Cavuto said this. I'm on national television with Neil Cavuto, and he goes, "Dave, I just realized national news commentators are not the most popular people, but I have a guest, you, who is even disliked more than me." And that was mortgage banking at the time. So hilarious.
Well, so David, let me wrap on this here as we kind of get down. So a lot of my audience are mortgage professionals on the street, loan officers, and I love those people because that's my people. I know what I know what they're dealing with every day. I dealt with it every day, and just a special kind of human. And so, do you have an advice, experience, story for them? Look, I mean, and I'll frame this up in my viewpoint and how I'm looking at the world right now. You know, I feel like we're in the middle of this weird storm. Yeah. It's good still. The rates are good. Market's hot. People are buying homes. You know, so most mortgage professionals, even though work's hard, you know, they're doing well. But you know, as we all know, mortgage industry doesn't always just do well. It has these huge valleys, these huge cycles. So what, you know, I'm kind of looking at like, well, where could this go? And What would you say?
I think I always consult to this. I started using this when what made me successful as a salesperson was I'd ask people why they're refinancing or why they're buying. I anchored all the difficult times on their why. If they didn't want to give me tax returns, I go, but didn't you tell me you want to buy this because you're pregnant and you have another baby coming? You pull on that why. So I anchor on someone's why. And so what I get to is, what is your why for being in the business? You may be even the best of times and everything's like that, but you get tired. There's some transactions, you know them out.
They rip your heart out.
Just kick you in the groin and you just feel like, do I even want to be in this anymore? It's just, or you have someone that dropped the ball. It wasn't your fault. You did everything well, but you're being blamed for it. You know how many stories we could go on and on. Everyone's got this.
Everyone's got them.
So here's the deal. I go back to this. What is your why? I believe that being a loan originator and being in this business is the fourth most transformative thing you can do for people's lives. The first thing, I think anyone who has a strong faith that says, you know what? Yeah, that's a spiritual, deep thing. One of the most important things. I think the second thing that can happen that's transformative in someone's life is get married and start having a family. I think that is, you find your life partner, and that is such a gift. The third thing is, guess what is when you have those kids. I talk about getting married and having the kids. There's something about even the guy, you know, how many guys you know that were party boys? They had trouble growing up.
Yes.
Until they got married, until they got that first kid. Then what do they want to go buy? You got to buy a house.
Yep.
All of a sudden, reality comes in, and it's the fourth most transformative thing in someone's lives. I think we're involved in one of the most special industries of all the vertical markets that you could be into, because we get to go in, and because of how we handle a situation, well, or badly, do really well or pathetically, it's going to make a difference in someone's life. And I think as professionals, that's why I'm so passionate, Alec, about let's do this and let's do it well. Let's do it in excellence. And that's why I love your podcast. You're interviewing people, and I'm just an honor to be on your podcast. Look at who you have as guests. I go, are you kidding me? You want me on? That's awesome. I think it's so important that we discover that why and we anchor on it. And we use that during those difficult times. It'll make all the difference in your life and your world. And more importantly, you'll make a difference in someone else's life.
David, God bless you, man. Thank you for hanging out with me today. And for everybody that's just kind of getting a flavor for you for the first time, man, it's like, where have you been? Go Lykken on Lending, follow this guy's journey. He's interviewing industry rock stars, and he's coming from it with this perspective. And I just want to thank you for carving time today, my man. It's been awesome.
It's an honor to be here with you. I really mean it. Congratulations on your success and continued success. Keep telling stories and encouraging others to do the same.
There it is, everybody. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you on the next episode of the Model Lending Podcast. Take care, everybody.